tempted to unbox it right here, and then that way I can just take the unit itself, put it on this table. I think that's what I'm gonna do. Here we've got the FlexBOSS18 by EG4. This is gonna go in our well house. We're gonna use it to power the 5-horse well pump over here. If you've been following the channel, you know that I've had multiple units down here, and the pump is currently running from my 6000 XPs, but I don't wanna have the load on those right now. So I wanna set this off as its own unit because every time it kicks on, it really strains the home. So Signature Solar was kind enough to send this one out for review. We're gonna test it out on this pump. It should be well more than capable of running this pump, which a lot of units have struggled with. So we're gonna try it out. We're gonna get it installed, and I'm gonna take you along with me. First things first, we need to see what is in this, guys, and then we'll start moving what we need into the well house. As always, they have a cardboard template. This is going to tell us where the unit's going to sit on the wall. These are super handy. They allow us to get precise drilling locations so that we can, make sure we're not putting this thing on crooked or in the wrong spot, which is definitely helpful if you're matching it up with a battery. And also, you don't want to have to be lifting the thing up and getting it up there just to find out it's in the wrong spot. What is this? Are you kidding me? We've got an actual hard manual. I've been lamenting the fact that all of the inverter manufacturers have been going to like digital only manuals, and it's been like, come on guys, why can't you just put a hard manual in here? Oh, thank you guys. This is awesome. Like I honestly didn't know this was in here. Now it's going to be out of date most likely because oh man, look, it's like the full color. It's actually high resolution. Sometimes they'll give you manuals that are, or some manufacturers will give you manuals that you could barely even make out what the picture is. This is awesome. But what I was saying is it's probably going to be out of date because, there's always little things from firmware updates that have changed. So I'm going to put this aside in a moment. But we've got our comms cables and parallel cables. I have found the easiest thing to do, instead of trying to lift these things out of the boxes, is just to cut the box apart. Now, yeah, it's going to ruin it for putting it back in the box if you later decide to sell it or, whatever, get rid of it. But it sure is a pain to try to lift these things out. So I just open the box. Now, there's going to be a few things going on in here. There's going to be a back plate that we're going to need to take off. And there's going to be probably some bolts in here somewhere. So, all right, I'm already seeing some of that, like these right here. I'm gonna cut this. Oh man, this is such a pretty unit. I love the look of this. If you haven't seen my previous FlexBOSS install, I've got an entire series where we go through the full setup, where I take a 4,000 square foot home for my buddy Mitch, and we take it off grid. We're grid connected, but we've got the panels, the FlexBOSS, the GridBOSS, all of that stuff, Tygo optimizers. So check that out. I'll have it in the description. It's the FlexBOSS21. This is the FlexBOSS18. So I'm probably going to just have to lift it out anyway. Okay, so a lot of that stuff that I was talking about is in the foam, but it's it's like underneath it. So I'm just gonna tilt it over toward me, lift it out, and put it in the well house. Oh gosh, it's heavy. Twist it my direction. Teamwork makes the dream work. Second plan, I'm gonna actually keep changing things. I'm gonna take this stuff out. I'm gonna start pulling this out. Here's the template. Arrow tells you go up. And it's not that it's so unbelievably heavy that I can't lift it. It's just awkward. And by awkward, I mean like it's an awkward shape for lifting things. So I don't want all this hardware to fall out and like this, get muddy. But once that's out, I don't mind like tilting this over. There we go. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Should probably get a more sturdy table. That's what we got for now. So once we look inside here, there's going to be these 3 different screws that's going to hold it on. We've got a little diagram, which is nice inside the front cover. We've got, which you can't see up here, some cautions and a QR code to scan to get the latest documentation. The only thing in here, unlike the 6,000 XPs and 12,000 and so on, is the only thing in here is a basic battery on and off switch. Everything else is going to have to be exterior, which is an added cost, but that's where the GridBOSS really shines, which I'm not currently pairing with this. If we look at the side, we can see the specs. You can take a look at those if you would like. If you remember my high voltage system that I had in here, I had one inverter right here. I had another inverter here, I think. That's like right here. And then I had 2 high voltage batteries on either of these concrete pads. I don't want to re-pour pads, but I also don't want to have the inverter so far away from this. So I'm going to go ahead and mount the FlexBOSS right here. We're actually going to be pairing it today with just a single BigBattery Husky 2. I know that's not really ideal, but it's going to work for it now. I do have another battery that we'll be adding soon, and we'll put it probably right here, and then we'll kind of go from there. Let's get this on the wall. We need to take our template. I'm going to get a pencil like this, see where we're going to put it. I mean, we might as well just center it up, I guess, right? I want to make sure. I'm going to do it a little bit higher because everything that we're going to be doing is going to be like right here. So let's get it about right there. I'm just going to, yeah, we're just going to go like that. And then I'm going to mark a couple of marks here. I want to make sure I'm hitting these guys. So I'm gonna go there, there. Actually, I want to do something like that, and then I'm gonna go over and get this one here, outline the whole thing. That way I know. That way I know where the bracket's supposed to go. So once I get that on there, yeah, it's gonna go basically just like that. got some big old bolts to put on here. Man, these guys they're thick. And should probably use them. Definitely not using the masonry anchors. Golly, big boys. I've had this thing in my toolbox for a while and have not actually had the opportunity to use it. I'm guessing these are 1/2 inch. Sweet. So I'm gonna pop that off. Then go back on there. This is gonna go on like this. Oh goodness. Why is it stripping? The way that these are like rounded off of it actually does not make this the best thing for it, which is a bit of a bummer. Although it did get them started quicker, it did not finish up very well. So 1/2 inch gets it going, but you definitely, Phillips is gonna drive it finally a little bit better. All right. Oh, that's too bad. Would have been nice. Darn close enough. This is the part where I should always get someone else, and I never do. All right, I want to make sure that I can get that on there, and I can. Actually, I say that. Mitch and I put his up together, and it was so much easier. Oh, gosh. Yeah. This is going to be fun. Not even sure how I'm going to do it. Yeah. How am I going to do this? Oh. Okay. All right, let it out a little. Again. All right, wait. All right, out. Again. Again. Okay, out. Again. Perfect. Out some more. Okay. All right. Okay. 2 screws, one there. All right, 3 rather. One there and one here. I'm going to go ahead and put these screws right here inside. All right, so this is the inside, and all the connections that we need are here. We've got this great big area to, have lots of room to place wires and connectors and whatever else it is that we need to put in here. So let's go over a couple things. First, right here, we've got the communication board. That's going to have stuff like your CT and your battery communications and your rapid shutdown and your generator start, all that stuff. Then over here, we've got our 2 different battery connections. These are going to be where we actually connect our battery. We've got 2 positives on this side, 2 negatives on this side. because in order to get the full value out of this, you really need to have it connected to at least 2 batteries. Then we've got the only switch that's inside this area, which is going to be the integrated bonded battery breaker. Then next over here, we've got the AC connections. We've got load on the left, L1 and L2, and then grid on the right, L1 and L2. The interesting thing about this is if you are using the GridBOSS, you don't even use the load for your loads. The GridBOSS will actually send power in from the grid, depending on what that is. That'll come from the GridBOSS, but then it also goes back to the GridBOSS on the same set of conductors here, L1 and L2, and of course your neutral. And so those will, or your load stays basically useless unless you want a sub panel, which is kind of cool. And that was that didn't ship with the original, but it came in a future firmware update. So then we've got our PV inputs over here on this side, and we've got 2 MPPTs, and each one can take 2 different strings. So we've got a positive and negative for the first array, and positive and negative for the second array on MPPT number 1. And then we've got positive and negative for your 2 strings on MPPT 2. Then of course right here, we've got our grounding PE. That's going to be our ground. And then finally, we've got our neutral bar. So we'll tie in our neutrals. All neutrals will go right here. While we're in here, let's go ahead and look at the communication board. There's a lot going on, but you know, some of it is usable, some of it is unusable, and we'll just have to kind of talk through it. Now, the manual actually shows this slightly different than what I'm seeing here. So there are a few things that have changed. Over here on the bottom, these are our dry contacts. Up here, this is our battery communications, and you can actually see it says right there, battery comms. So it's kind of helpful that it's printed on the board itself. And then right here, we've got our CT interface. That's going to be used if we're using the CTs, and in this situation, we're going to. If you've got the GridBOSS, you don't use the CTs on the FlexBOSS. Then down here, we've got our parallel communication ports. Since we're not paralleling these units, we're not actually going to use those. And we've got our RSD right here. That's our rapid shutdown. And right now it's jumped because it's a normally closed feature. But if you're going to be installing an external like button to press to shut everything down, we would put that in here. And then if we need power, we're going to pull that from over here as well. Then over here, we've got this first dip switch and the second. Those 2 are reserved. You don't touch those, just leave them alone. And then the third one over here, this is for paralleling the units. And that's pretty much everything we need to talk about. The next thing we're going to do is connect our positive and negative. I've already backed these guys out here. So you want to back out your terminals. I'm only using 2, as I mentioned, for right now. So I'm going to need to knock out a couple of these, well, knockouts. One thing that I'm kind of bummed that was not included, and seems to have always been included in the past, is these guys here. I don't know what they're called. Little like, I don't know. I'm not going to even come up with a word for it because one in my head didn't sound right. So I'm kind of bummed, but I've got plenty of these left over from previous projects. So I'm going to knock out these 2. I'm going to have one for my positive and one for my negative, because eventually I'll run both positives through this one and both negatives through this one. That just seems to make sense. I would highly encourage that before you strip the ends of your wires, you go ahead and run them through here. I've made this mistake several times in several of my builds. It's just so much better if you just run them through, get them out here a little bit, and then strip the ends. Otherwise, you mess up all those nice fine hairs. Now, if you've got ferrules on the ends, it doesn't really matter, but I don't have ferrules this size. I believe this is 1/0. Sometimes, and I'm not going to do it this time, but sometimes if I'm using the I think it's 4/0 on here, These guys here are really difficult to get in because they spread out so much, but I can just get this one in here just fine. It's not a big deal. If I use, like I said, if I was using larger conductors, I would probably put a like a zip tie on the end of it and guide it in. Got torque specs on this. I believe it's 5 Newton meters, 44 inch-pounds. I'll have to get my torque wrench out, come back and hit this in a bit. But I'm not going to show you that. I'm going to do that. I'm gonna do a nice tug test. Make sure it ain't coming out, and it's not. I'm going to push all these down, kind of make an awkward scenario for something trying to crawl up in it. You know, while I was taking apart the last system that was here, interestingly enough, I had ferrules on the ends of my conductors up here in these terminals, and it was this kind of, oh goodness, you see that, man? It was kind of that Wago style connector, you know, with like the flip tabs or whatever. Anyway, I was using that, and the stinking ferrule broke off inside. Like I flipped the flip up, and it didn't let go of it. So we had to spend, I don't know how much time trying to dig the darn thing out. It was super frustrating. So as I previously mentioned, for right now, we're going to go ahead and connect this to the BigBattery Husky 2. It is not enough to really do what we want to do here, but it's enough for proof of concept, and then we'll get another battery in here. And these guys are pretty simple, right? I mean, it's basically, you've got your positive and negative terminal. It's not a whole lot different than like a regular old 12-volt battery. So we're going to connect this and put my eye protection on so Safety Sally doesn't come unhinged in the comment section, and because it's a good idea. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to connect the negative first, which is probably wrong. Also, you can see the power's off, BMS is turned off. So I did see a guy get shocked on one of these before. He touched both terminals at the same time. It gave him a good little zap. He felt it. He's all right, but I wouldn't recommend doing it. And then let's hit up positive. Hopefully my head hasn't been in the way of this whole thing, so you can't see what I'm doing. I'm pretty sure, like 85, 90% positive that we're going to be able to do communication. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and I'm going to connect into the top left right here. That's going to do our battery comms. And then we'll come down here. We'll go into port 1. Just get that in for now. Could have cut that one a little bit shorter and it would have been a bit cleaner. I know that ferrules would be better here. I'm choosing not to use them. But if you want to use ferrules, use ferrules. I've got all the wiring connected now, so we've got our positive and negative for our our batteries. Those are going down here to the, what's that? Okay, don't put your coffee on top of the battery. And then I've got my load, which is my L1 and L2. I always mark L2 as red. That's kind of standard. I say I always do that. Sometimes I get that backwards. But L2 is going to be red in this situation. So we also see red here for L2. This is our grid. This is our load. So the grid is coming from my existing off-grid system right now, which is my 6000 XPs, as I've mentioned before. I've also got my ground. So the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to connect your ground from right here on this PE, and I've got it running over here to this this ground bar here, which is running down through this copper cable down to the ground bar. Then you're going to connect, I guess it depends on which one you're going to do, but I think grid first is what I did. So I connected my L1 and my L2. I've got those going down through this conduit, and they're landing over here on this breaker, which is turned off at the moment. Okay, this is where my power comes up from the house, from my 6000 XPs, and it's coming into here. Then it's splitting out going this way on a 60 amp breaker, and then another 60 amp breaker is going up. Okay, we'll talk about that one in a minute. So it's coming up into here, and this is where my power is coming into the FlexBOSS. I'm coming here on L1 and L2, also on a neutral. Okay, I did not choose to take a ground and go through here into this box, because this box is grounded right here, and it's the same thing as far as I'm concerned. But best practices, I'm sure, would be to take a ground in there. Now, I know you guys are going to roast me in the comment section for not doing that. I do not see how it's possible for that to cause a difference, but well, you guys let me know. Okay, so that's there. The next thing is, after I've connected my ground or my grid input, that's coming into here, then it's got to go out. So that's going to be our load panel. Now, if we were using the GridBOSS, it's the FlexBOSS, the GridBOSS is the gateway that pairs with it, we wouldn't be using the load. We would only be using the grid, and the GridBOSS would actually be sitting like right here, and it would manage all this. And so it would, actually the GridBOSS would probably be here. But anyway, if you want to see how that setup is, go check out my video where I installed that on Mitch's property. So right now, but because we don't have the GridBOSS, we're going to use the load, and that's going to go in here, back behind and into this. So you can see I'm using much larger conductors here. I'm using 1 gauge, and I'm using a 90 amp breaker, because once this has PV on it, it's going to have the power to push those 90 amps. I don't have 90 amps coming in here, or I don't want 90 amps coming up. I do have a 100 amp breaker feeding this, so it's possible I could go ahead and put a 90 there. I don't see the situation where I'm going to need it. So it's going to come in here. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because we need to make sure that I don't have, oh, and also this is coming from right here. We had that 60 amp breaker coming up, and that's coming up right here, and it's feeding into this breaker, which is feeding this panel. If I flip this one on and this one on at the same time, then we're going to have two competing inputs coming in here, and it could cause all sorts of problems. So these two cannot be on at the same time, which is why I've purchased this Interlock kit. It was a spider or something, just jumped on my arm. And that is going to mount on this, and it's going to make sure that I have to turn this one off first, and then I can slide up and over and then turn that one on, or vice versa. So that's how that's going to work. Inside here, I've got my well pump, and then I've got my SPD, which is right here, which is currently turned off because I just did some rewiring. So I'm going to turn this on, and you'll see that blue light turn on. This is protecting us from surges. If you're going to be installing all of this, spending thousands of dollars on a setup, spend the $100 to get yourself an SPD on your AC. And it's good to have it on your AC in and your AC out, or I guess your grid and load, as well as on your PV. I don't have the PV installed yet, so we're not doing that yet, but I've got that right there. I've got a whole video on these, which I'll try to put in the description. So that's basically it. I've got my two inputs that are going to be one or the other. This is going to be a binary setup. The well pump, and then right here I've got the 20 amp that is kind of running the lights right now. It's basically just running this, and then room for more stuff. So that is our current setup. I think we're ready to start configuring it and getting this thing basically commissioned. We're gonna do that right here. Look at those fingerprints. Man, I got to stop letting my kids touch the computer. That's not true at all. We have to install the CT clamps. That way we can monitor everything. So yeah, we gotta do that first. You're supposed to install the CT clamps as close to the meter base as possible. My meter base is about 1,500 to 2,000 feet away. And as you've already seen over here, that's basically just a straight shot up through here. So I don't see the reason to try to stuff these into that box. That's what I did with the Solus stuff that I had previously in here. But it is so cramped in there. I'm just gonna hook them on right here. And is it going to be perfect or ideal? No, but I can't get perfect. So this is what we're gonna do. These are marked with L1 and L2 on them. The L1 is going to be the yellow and the L2 is red. That makes sense on the red. The yellow, I guess, they didn't want to make it white. That makes sense. The other thing is there's going to be an arrow on here, and the arrow is showing you, it's like coming, this is the grid entering here, and then you're heading to the PCS or the inverter. All right, so see if I can open this with gloves on, and I can, not bad. All right, so I'm looking for L2, and I've got these loops in here because I was going to make sure I had something to grab onto. And again, grid is coming this way and then going into that. So I'm going to take this here, and I'm going to hook it on just like that. Now, if any of you guys are aware of some reason why having it inside this cabinet is absolutely the worst possible thing, let me know and I'll come back and try to figure something out. But for now, this is how it's going on, and I think it's going to be just fine. So we've got that right there. Now we've got to put it into the CT port, which is this one right here. I'm going to bend this a little bit and click it in just like that. So again, we've got our L1 coming up in here and going into the grid side, and then our L2 coming up and going into the grid side, and then we're clicked on. Let's verify our directions, grid, arrows pointing that way, and we're good to go. All right, so at this point, we are ready to turn it on. Now, we want to make sure that we've tested our voltage. I know that I've got the correct voltage here. I've tested this many times, but you're going to want to test, make sure you've got, your proper voltages on your AC side, down here at your breakers. Make sure you've got the proper size battery. You don't want to be putting on a 24 volt battery if you've got this 48 volt system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is outlined in one of these sections, I think here. Anyway, no, right there, page 31. So next thing we're going to do is go ahead and turn things on. We want to first turn on or close this battery breaker right here. And that's because we want to make sure that when we turn this on, the internal resistor in it is going to pre-charge and not shoot full power straight to the unit, and then you'll end up with a fault here. If you want to see that, I did it in my last video with the 12,000 XP. Anyway, so we've got that on. Now I'm going to go here. I'm going to wiggle these, make sure they're good, and they are. Now I'm going to go ahead and just turn on this BMS, if I can, my fingers. There it is, powered on. Actually heard it click up here, and would you look at that? Also, I'm being very cautious to make sure I have this turned off. Okay, I do not want power coming in there. One of the last things we need to do to get ready is go ahead and get this. This I don't know if I'm going to block it all out, but we got to get this dongle on here. All right. And it's going to go right here, and then there's, why am I trying to show you like that? 4 screws. Then you can go on. This is for your remote monitoring, and it's going to allow you to connect to Wi-Fi so that you can get to this thing from anywhere in the world and see what it's doing, update the changes, all that stuff. So got to make sure you have this on, and it's kind of a pain to get to right here for me, but that's just because of where I put it. So okay guys, so I've got it on here. I turned on the battery, and then I turned on the grid. So we've got grid. In fact, I could probably safely turn this one off just as a double redundancy. That's off and that's off. So this is on, and now we are powering the lights and the Wi-Fi, which is going out that way, and the well pump from these guys right here. So we're doing all right there, normal. And then if we come over here, we can see I couldn't get the battery communications to work, so we're actually just running in lead acid, but this is proof of concept, and I'm about to swap this out for a different battery anyway. So we can see that we've got 52.7 volts here, on the battery, and of course we want to actually see the SoC. We've got that. What we're going to do is come over here. We're going to hook on to this guy, and we're going to do our amps. We'll do over here where you can see me. We're going to do an inrush test, and oh shoot, this isn't my, I don't have inrush on this. So I guess for now we'll just do a max amperage. And then we're actually going to turn on the well pump. There it goes. That's going to show lower than it actually is, but well pump just kicked on. You see that? We go over here and refresh, and we should see this battery is putting out, there it is, 6511. So tons of power coming from this one battery, which is super impressive. So that's pretty cool. Now it is starting to have issues here because the battery is not able to keep up. So I'm going to turn that back off. So I don't want to pretend like this one battery is going to be enough all the way around, but it did get it started. But at some point it starts clicking. So I'm not sure what that is. I think it's just that it's not able, like the voltage starts dropping too much. So there's that. That's it. It's installed. I'm excited. If you're interested in the next video where I install a bigger battery, that's going to be right here. And if that's not out yet, check out this one on SPDs and why you need them. I'm Merrick. Talk to you on the next one.